What we're going to talk about today is providing financial assistance. We're going to talk about that very briefly, and then we're going to talk about when someone asks for help, and then we're going to go ahead and talk about our process. It's still very important to go through the process as you are assessing people that call into your church for assistance. And then we're going to spend the bulk of our time on COVID-19 resources. We have quite a few resources that are in the community right now, and those are changing regularly, and we want to keep you up to date on those. So this is a slide that we use for all of our trainings. It's from the book Helping Without Hurting in Church Benevolence with Steve Corbett and Brian Fickert. I affectionately call it the Purple Book and always have it with me. But it talks about, there's really three kind of categories for poverty alleviation. And those are relief, which is, urgent and temporary provision of aid. It's kind of stopping the bleeding, I guess you would say, and it's to kind of stop suffering, and it's temporary. And then kind of when the bleeding stops, then you have rehabilitation, and that's when you're trying to help restore a person along with them back to their pre-crisis condition. And then development is the process of ongoing change. And what you typically hear from Compassion Coalition is, please don't provide relief when development is necessary. And typically when people call our churches, they're in a situation where they're really in a chronic poverty situation. And so development is the appropriate approach. But COVID-19 has really turned all of this upside down. And so right now, Carol and I strongly believe that we are under relief, which is urgent and temporary provision, and really stopping, immediate suffering. And so what we would say to you right now is what we recommend as you assess situations and look at situations is really to err on the side of caution and maybe go ahead and assist when in the past you may not have. And we really feel like that what we can do, if we track who we talk to, we get all the information we need, that eventually we can follow up and maybe build relationship later, invite them to a Getting Ahead class or faith and finance class, or walk with them. So we just really wanted to tell you that we feel like this is kind of turned upside down right now. So I briefly want to talk to you about, when somebody calls for help. There's a lot of urgency right now, and I would say to you, try to calm down the urgency a little bit. These are urgent times, and people who call may be, very intense, very stressed out, and so kind of calming down the urgency is important. So you have to kind of pay attention to your own feelings, because we're all kind of living through this crisis, and we may feel a little bit stressed. But we can be more helpful to people when we kind of step out of that and try not to jump in there with them and try to really assess the situation. An example that we had this week, 211 was telling me that someone called in and they had gotten a letter from their landlord, and they were very upset, and they were like, we're going to be kicked out, and the landlord's very upset that we haven't paid our rent, and we lost our jobs, and they were really upset, and the whole staff was upset too. They're like, why are they evicting them? And so finally Russ Jensen said, can I see the letter? And when he read the letter was actually very nice, and the only reason he received a letter, it was to say, we're not charging late fees, we will work with you, but we're sending you a letter because we haven't heard from you yet. So that's one tip is, make sure that people contact their landlords, contact the utility companies, do all that. But you got to calm it down a little bit, because they're so upset that they may take everything wrong. And so, so you kind of have to look at that. So, how you feel when somebody asks for help, is really important that you pay attention to that. It's also good to make sure you go ahead and tell people the process that you have at your church when they do ask you for help. Tell them up front if you can't help them financially, but tell them, I want to hear your story because I may have some place that I can refer you. So our process, there's 4 steps in our process. listening, gathering information, verifying, and connecting. And while this process may be a little bit less daunting right now, it's still important to go through this process. So I'm just going to talk to you about the first two, and then Carolyn's going to talk to you about the second two. So listening to the story may be more important right now than it ever has been. You want to listen for stress and how that person's doing. Maybe they don't have anybody to talk to, and you're the first person that's been willing to listen, so it really shows them that you care. Our community, you know, a few weeks ago in a 48-hour period had I want to say 7 or 8 suicides just in a 48-hour period. And so listening can be very important. Isolation for people who struggle with mental health issues or people who are recovering from addiction can be really difficult. And so listening is very important. Also, if you don't listen to their story, you're not going to know how to help them. So hear everything. An example where I messed up last week is I was talking to a single father who had 4 teenagers. Normally he can cover expenses, but very much paycheck to paycheck. So he's kind of really already struggling. And his water had been cut off right before the utility companies decided not to cut off. And he didn't have food either. And so I got so focused on food and the fact that his water was cut off that I completely forgot to ask him about rent. So later on, Carolyn said to me, "So how's he doing on his rent?" And I was like, "I don't know." And so it's really important to really ask all those questions, go through the process, really listen to their story. When somebody calls for assistance, and this pretty much typically always happens, a lot of times they may tell their story a little bit differently when they're distressed. And we learn from Bridges Out of Poverty that people who live in an environment of poverty tend to still tell their story a little differently. So they may start with the very most dramatic part, or they may start from the end. And a lot of times in middle class, we are beginning, middle, and end. So as they're telling the story, especially if they're distressed, they may go back and forth. And so you're going to have to ask questions. But try to listen first, because it's really not the time to be advising or saying maybe you should cut off your cable or things like that. But ask them open-ended questions. Ask them things like, "Can you tell me a little bit more about," or, you know, "Tell me what happened with work." Just try to use open-ended questions so that you can get the whole story and know how to help them. The second step in the process is gathering information. This is still very important. Hang on just a second. My dog is crying. 2 seconds. Sorry, that was very distracting. So the second step in the process is gathering information. And so it's really important to get all this information. One of the reasons is that we want to follow up with them later. So now while we're in crisis, you may be helping quite a few people, but still get that information, because later we can follow up with them, possibly build relationship and get them involved in things like getting ahead in a just getting by world or faith and finance, or possibly match them with a mentor who may be able to walk with them. So also with their income and expenses, still you need to get all that information, because that's really going to help you to know, who do I refer them to? And you know, if you don't know what their income is, or you don't know if they're a single mom or whether they're a veteran or things like that, there may be special services. And again, Carolyn's going to talk to you about those, but make sure and get that information. Also with the outcome, you want to know what you've done. Make sure that you track all of that. If you don't have a form that you use, we can send you a form that you can use right now. Just make sure and use some kind of form, because you will typically forget some of the information if you don't use a form. And so we highly recommend that you do that. And so the first step in the process was to listen to their story. The second step is to gather plenty of information. Again, we're going to err on the side of caution sometimes and go ahead and help. And Carolyn is going to tell you about how to maybe verify and then how to make those connections and talk to you about the resources. And Carolyn, I'm going to turn my screen off so you can turn yours on. And again, if you have questions, you can put them in the comments. Are you good, Carolyn? Okay.
Getting to it
okay.
here.
Okay.
Is it showing up?
Yeah, you just need to do the slideshow.
Okay.
You got it.
We practiced yesterday, so we're good. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming to training this morning. I think we've got really important things to talk about. So we're now on the third step of the process, which is to verify their circumstances. As we're teaching this in a normal setting, we always want to verify what the need is and the level of crisis is to determine whether church help is needed. During these circumstances, I just want to go over some things before we talk about specific verifications. One of the biggest things that we're thinking about right now is, can the presenting financial request wait for benefits to come in? And we'll be talking in a minute about what some of those benefits are. So that's hard to gauge, but we do want to take a look at that. And then, as Gina was saying, you know, you have to do the listening first. We do need to ask them a lot of questions, but we've got to form that connection with them and let them feel that they have support before we start asking. And trying to be aware of the level of stress that they're under. I mean, sometimes they're breaking down in tears and it's very, very obvious how stressed they feel. But something to think about, is this a family that normally lives on the edge and is used to going without resources? Or is it a family that is all of a sudden thrown into a situation where they have nothing and they're not accustomed to that at all? I had a lady who is a single mom, and believe it or not, she makes a lot of money as a waitress and she has quite a high rent. And she said, I have never been behind on a bill and I don't know what to do. I can't pay for anything. She was panicked. She said, I have zero income. So she needed to talk through all those feelings before I started asking her, gathering the information to see whether she was eligible for something. So bearing in mind this level of stress, sometimes we're going to want to just move forward with some kind of support, maybe a box of food, a gas card, a grocery card, and just tell them, we're going to bring that to you, because that's going to alleviate what you're dealing with today, which is you don't have money for food. And then you'll be able to talk to them about some of the bigger stressors that they're under and also some of the resources they might be eligible. So verification for just doing something simple like that, I think the fact that you're talking to them and they're sounding stressed is a good enough reason to give them food or a food card. It just helps them to be able to deal with where they're at. So this is some of the things that we normally verify, and they can be useful to you now, even in this situation. Charity Check is a web-based program that we have about 60 churches and nonprofits logged on to. They log on every time they assist somebody with either financial help or food or whatever it is. So it's good to check this. You have to have bought into Charity Check. And if you're not familiar with it, if you're on this call and not familiar with it, I'd be glad to demo it for you after this call. You do have to have their name and the last 5 of their social to check. And what this shows you is, what is their pattern of assistance been? And it also shows you if they have some relationship with another church or entity, maybe you can partner with that church to help them, you know, during this time. So we can show you Charity Check later. KUB, we know that they are not, you know, cutting off at this time, and they've just decided to waive late fees. But I want to talk to you about, before we go into depth in that, I want to tell you a little bit about how to verify. It's good to see, you know, how large their bill is. What is the final notice? Even though they're not cutting off, it's good to see that. Has the person been making payments before this crisis? Have they had help? from a charity. So you can call the KUB. There's a back number for KUB, a customer counselor number. For churches and nonprofits, we can give you that. This is not the credit department or the normal number. You go to this particular number and talk to the customer care counselors. They will tell you all of this history, and that'll help you sort of in assessing the whole situation. Because even though cutoff is suspended and rent is stopped, at some point they're going to owe all these bills for the next couple months, and it could snowball. And you want to take a look at, are they going to have enough stimulus or other resources to cover what they owe, or is it just gigantic and maybe the church wants to assist some as well. Okay, so rent or mortgage. As we were mentioning, there is a moratorium for 120 days, and it was starting on March 27th. Federal moratorium stating that you should not evict, charge late fees, services, or other penalties. I hope all the landlords are abiding by that, but I do not know. And then at the end of the 120 days, it says the landlords must provide a 30-day notice before they file or proceed with eviction. So that's 150 days from March 27th. Now, bear in mind, they still owe every bit a month of rent during those months, every single penny they're going to owe. So that's another thing as you're analyzing what kind of help they need. So we'll talk more about resources for rent in just a minute. So employment, sometimes when we're walking with somebody, maybe they've had an incident, they've broken their ankle and they can't work, but they're going back, and the doctor said they're going back in 6 weeks. That's an example of how a church might verify employment with the person's permission, either by asking them to bring in a paycheck stub or calling the employer. In this setting that we're in, I'm thinking that we don't really need to do that, because as they apply for different programs, they're going to have to provide proof of that they were laid off due to Corona. But anyway, you can bear that in mind if it's a case that you're just going to have to take it case by case, but that is something that you can verify. With medical, sometimes again we ask the person to bring a statement in saying they're off work due to a specific thing and then they're able to go back. I don't know that you're probably going to find anything that you need to do that for right at this moment. You can look at medications. Just be careful you're not paying for pain medicine or that kind of thing. Just be careful of what you're paying for. And always with medical, look to see where are they going to get it next month. If you help them with this urgent need for medication, what's going to happen. We had one where somebody needed insulin immediately, and there was no time to go through the normal protocol. So we discovered you can get insulin at Walmart without a prescription, fairly cheap. So, things like that. So you'll have to take medical at, at face value. So if you are helping with rent, if you do decide for whatever reason to help with rent, and it's a private landlord, you want to make sure he's the owner of the property. Now, if it's an apartment complex, you don't have to worry about that. So you can go to the property assessor tax lookup and see who owns the property. I think CAC is the one that told us about this many years ago, and they said they had paid rent for a guy and the landlord was coming in to pick up the check, and it turned out with some investigation that it wasn't the landlord, it was a drug dealer. And so they had the check written to the wrong person. So we just want to be careful of who you're dealing with and what you're who you're writing the check to. Any questions on any of this so far? No chats? Okay. So we're going to move on from verification to the fourth step of our process. So we've had listen to their story, gather information, verify circumstances that you need to, and the last is connect. And as usual, we're trying, especially as church benevolence folks, to connect to every government resource first. And provide support for the church before we tap into church financial money. So you've got the individual in the middle of this little diagram, and you can see all the different things that we're looking at. And Gina and I are trying really, really hard to keep up with what everybody is doing as far as the social service entities. And it's hard because they're developing what they're doing right now. So we're trying to keep in touch with those resources, and we'll pass those on to you. And as Gina said, we have a connection point call center here at Compassion Coalition. We have not closed for one day during this. Gina and I felt really strongly that we would not close because we need to maintain the connection between people in need and churches and community and social services. So we take, calls every day. If you're not familiar with us, we take calls every day from people in crisis, from churches who are walking with somebody. We take calls from caseworkers that know us and they're in a gap situation where their person, they cannot help them with government funds. And they're asking for a church to help with gap needs. So we take calls from every direction and we go through the same process that we're talking about. We have volunteers. What have we got? 4 now working at home, Gina? We've got 4 volunteers that luckily early in March, we had the thought that maybe we should train them to work at home. And God always provides for our needs because in late January, we had set up a satellite office, a call center satellite office at Cokesbury, and we already had computers and everything needed. So we just sort of flipped that and sent the volunteers home with computers and trained them how to take these calls off. So even as we're training today, there's volunteers working on calls. So feel free that you can call us. All of you probably have Gina and I's cell phone numbers. So I'm working from home. Gina's at the office mostly and Charmin's at home, but we're available. Just give us a call. Okay, so looking at resources, which is a connection piece, COVID specific, I guess is what we're going to call it. 211 has been the lead in fielding all questions about the coronavirus. So they are certainly a phenomenal resource to call. They're taking the lead in that and have had many, many calls. We have our role in that from the beginning. We decided we'd update our food pantry list. So we have this list that one of our volunteers has been calling every week to see who's open, who's not, are there hour changes. So we have a list on our website of food pantries. So if that's a need that you have, if you're dealing with someone that doesn't live close to your church and that you can find another food pantry closer, that's going to be available for you. And I'm so proud of all the food pantries. They're doing an amazing, amazing job. They quickly switched to a drive up, distribution. You all probably heard this, where they're just putting the stuff in the trunk. And I haven't heard of a shortage of food yet with any of the food pantries. So I think that's a viable resource. There's some across the city that will deliver if it's a person that's disabled or a mother that doesn't have transportation. There's a handful of people that I know about that will take a box. I'm glad to do that. And we have some volunteers at KLF. My food pantry, which is at the Knoxville First Seventh-day Adventist, is open and we've got plenty of food boxes. In fact, Tuesday, I was over there and we had one person come. We're like, okay, that's never happened before, but I think it was the stimulus checks coming in and people weren't coming out. So that's there. And then also on Compassion Coalition, we have a resource list that we've been compiling as we hear about websites or different ministries or nonprofits or social services that are helping in some way. We're updating this resource list on our website as well. So you can access that anytime that you need it. It's been really, really, really helpful. And we'll keep working on that. We have a volunteer dedicated to continue trying to update it. And then we also have our quick referral guide, which we list a variety of resources, not COVID specific, but just resources in general. And that's on our website, available for members. And that's very helpful because it has everything from A to Z in it. The most frequently referred to items, I won't say it has everything, but it has things that we refer to most frequently at Compassion Coalition. So if you have a question about any of those, you can let us know. Any questions on those? Nope. Okay. Charmin's watching the chat box for me. Okay. So we're going to try to plow through the COVID resources. Some of you may be in the middle of doing referrals and you maybe have studied or worked on this. So feel free to jump in during this time and update us if we don't have something quite current, or if you know something we don't, which, I'm wanting to learn. So feel free to correct or add to this, but I'll tell you what we know at this point. So of course, the CARES Act, everybody knows about. I've talked to people that have received their stimulus. It was people this week primarily that had filed taxes. So has anybody else had people they've talked to that have gotten their stimulus? I don't know. So I think it is going out. My concern is for the non-filers. So I was over at an apartment complex a few weeks ago delivering food, and there were several people there. They were, I don't know, mainly middle-aged. They didn't file taxes. They didn't have a disability check. They had medical issues, and they weren't working very much. And so this is a question of how do they get their stimulus. But the deal is to go on the IRS website, and there's a non-filers form there. But do folks have the ability to do that, or do they need help and support? So you might find someone you can figure out how to assist remotely, or, with still social distancing. I don't know. But they need help getting it. So it seems like the people that are the most destitute are not getting it super easily. But anyway, that's something to think about. And then unemployment for those that have been laid off or decreased. Of course, you've heard all of that on the news. It's just crazy. I don't even know what the numbers are, how much Tennessee's been hit. But there's a website there that you can go on to try to get the unemployment filed. And if anyone's had experience and wants to share a story of what they've done with someone, that would be fine. Okay, Sharman, you have to unmute. Unmute.
I just did. Okay, so I helped a woman that was one of our Getting Ahead graduates file for unemployment. And the process took us about 5 hours just to get her signed up for unemployment. She had lost her job. She'd just gotten a job working at one of the local hotels, had been there 2 weeks and got laid off. And so she had work prior to that, so she was eligible for the unemployment. She was my cat bumping me.
Mine swatting me a minute ago.
So she needed to file, but had a really hard time even getting on the system.
Mm-hmm.
Because there were so many people applying. It would time out and time out and time out. So you just had to be really patient and wait for that little wheel of death to kind of finish its thing and go through. So, but after about 5 hours, we did get her her unemployment filed. But then the next week she had to verify. They have to verify every week. Although the search for employment has been waived, she still has to go on and answer. There are like 5 or 6 questions that you have to answer every week. And so she was going through that same process of having to get into that system and verify that she was still unemployed and she hadn't accepted any work that week and that type of thing. And that was timing out. And they had a thing on the top of the unemployment site that said, if you can't verify on Sunday because of the volume, to try again on Monday. And if you couldn't do it on Monday, to try again on Tuesday. So they're working very hard to make sure that people get verified. And yesterday she told me that she did get her $600 increase on her unemployment yesterday.
Wow.
So she said it came yesterday and she was over the moon. She was like, I get to go to the grocery store. She said, I don't know if I can find toilet paper, but I'm so excited that I get to go to the grocery store. So it is happening. It's just, it's taking some time. It took her about 21 days before she got her first unemployment check.
21 days. Wow.
Yeah. So that was, but after she got her first one, then it's regular. So her first one was like $129. And then her next check was the $600 increase. So
yeah, that is amazing. So there's a state benefit, which is, I want to say up to $275. Don't quote me on that, depending on how much you've earned. And then the federal thing is $600 extra a week, no matter what you've earned. And the sheet that I found on it said that this, even though they might be filing now, they can go retroactive back to March 29th if they were unemployed. So, and then Shar and I were listening to the news the other day, and we found another possible help for unemployment. It was a program called donotpay.org, I guess. At any rate, it's a program that normally helps people find legal assistance on their own. Well, he wrote some kind of app to help people sort of bypass the wait line with unemployment. So he asked some questions on his app, and the person answers that, and then it's mailed into the state unemployment. So I don't know, some states have systems that are antiquated, and they were more designed for mailing, not all this intense, internet action. So it's do not pay. I can't endorse it. I can't tell you how it works. We just heard about it, and they were getting responses within a week, and able to do it quickly rather than sitting online. So I don't know. That might be something you'd want to try. Does anybody else have any other input on unemployment? Any experience or anything? Oh, Gina gave you sent them a little tip sheet on applying for employment, right? Didn't that go out to them?
Yeah, I emailed that with the Zoom link to sign up.
Okay,
so you've got a little tip sheet in navigating that site.
I have a couple of comments in the chat box.
Okay.
Jerry said she had 3 people tell her yesterday that they got their stimulus check.
Wow.
And also Sharon said that she knows of 2 people who have received their stimulus. Both had already filed their 2019 tax return.
Wow.
So she also has to walk through the unemployment process with 2 people who have had the same issues and timing out and being unable to recertify.
Yeah.
So, however, both did receive the extra $600 this week, so that's good.
How exciting.
So
anybody else?
I do have one more. Alexa said, my family got our stimulus yesterday. Folks that we know already filed taxes, already got theirs as well. I think direct deposit is processing it a bit quicker.
Okay, awesome. That is awesome. So it's something to think about for our folks that don't have internet access, they don't have a bank account, and they didn't file. So something I read somewhere said it could be 6 months before they get it. It could be a lot longer than people that are all set up already. So, as we're talking through these resources, be thinking about what people are asking you for help with. If they're asking for KUB or rent, be thinking about this. So you've got to sort of judge how much money they're getting in. We had a single man call this week, and he was 50% back on work and couldn't pay April rent, of course, and it wasn't very much. It was under $700, and he was very, very panicked. So we talked to him. I think Shar talked to him quite a bit and said, "Have you gotten your stimulus?" No. So why don't we wait a little bit? We'll follow along with you, see how you're doing. Reassured him that the landlords are not supposed to move toward eviction. The courts are closed anyway, so it's not like you could evict somebody right this second. So we provided him support, and we're going to follow as he's waiting to see if his stimulus is going to be enough help and how his employment is doing. And applying for, I don't know for sure if part-time people that are cut back part-time can apply. There was some debate about that in something I was reading. Something we need to check out. So let's go on to KUB. The disconnects were suspended on March 16th. That doesn't mean the bills aren't piling up, and it doesn't mean that you shouldn't help at all. Because sometimes if the bill is pretty high and they're not eligible for unemployment seems to be the key here. If they're getting their $600 a week, they can pay for everything. But if they're not, you might consider helping some as well. Late fees were waived, and that was effective April 14th, and I think it's going back retroactively. They're removing them, but there's a little catch with the late fees. For late fees to be waived, customers must contact KUB in some manner seeking bill payment assistance or enter into a payment program. So if they don't call KUB, the fees won't be waived. And that was from someone from KUB. They told us that.
Carolyn, we have a question back to the IRS issue, or to the unemployment issue, I'm sorry. If someone is newly unemployed due to the pandemic, what would be the process for receiving the increase? That's automatic, isn't it?
I think it's automatic. Didn't your person say?
Yeah, it was. She didn't apply for anything extra. It just happened. So okay. I think that is an automatic response. So.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything in what I read. I was reading something from CNN that said anything about having to apply. I think it is automatic, and it's sort of interesting because some people are going to be making a lot more per week on unemployment than they did working.
Yeah.
So,
And then we had one other comment that said, Rosetta said that her father-in-law was able to go to the IRS website and put in his direct deposit info to make sure that they wouldn't have to wait for their check, and they had already filed their taxes.
yeah, I read that somewhere.
Yeah.
That's good. Thank you
Yeah.
for that. Yeah. So if you don't have direct deposit set up, because maybe you're not getting refunds or you're paying
Yeah.
and you don't have a direct deposit, that's great. Make it easier. Anything we can do to make it easier for them. So yeah, so KUB, just going to have to take it on a judgment call as to whether your church or entity is going to help a little bit. We have helped a good bit this past month at Compassion Coalition. It was way before stimulus and bills were mounting and people were stressed. So we would do like $50 or something on the KUB or 75 just to try to ease the stress level and knock the bill down a little bit, because the stimulus is only going to stretch so far when you're talking about rent and KUB and car insurance and food and et cetera. It's at $1,200 or whatever is going to go pretty fast. And if they have children, they'll get more, of course. But okay, so we're down to LIHEAP. LIHEAP is Low Income Heat and Energy Assistance Program. It's a federal program that helps low income people with their utilities every year. It usually gives around $350 once a year. Now, people have already gotten this for this year, but now it's possible to apply for additional payments. Normally, they help people that are at 150% of poverty, and now they're going to help people at 200% of poverty. So we've got that poverty sheet, and we'll email it out to you. I just upped the one you did, Jim, a long time ago. We're still using that, but I updated it with the 2020 figures. So we'll email that out to you so you know what that is. So that's another thing that you can tell people about, especially if their KUB bill is getting up there. Okay. Any questions about that? All right. And that's at CAC. All right. Okay, so we're going to go into some more assistance that's going on right now. And I think Gina emailed the first one out to you already. These are
I did.
You got that one out? Okay.
Mhm.
You have that in your email you can look at with all the details there. So families with children who have lost employment due to COVID may be able to apply through DHS, same place that they apply for their food stamps, for TANF, which is Temporary Assistance to Needy Families. They have to have, you have to be have been employed as of March 11th and lost your employment or 50% of your earned income as a result of the COVID pandemic. And you have to have children under the age of 18. And I think the payment is for up to 2 months of emergency help. So for a household of 1 to 2 people, it's $500. For a household of 3 to 4, it was $750. So this is awesome. If they do have children and they fall into that lost work setting, they can get some more help from DHS.
Carolyn, we have a question that says, is reapplying for the LIHEAP, the additional LIHEAP benefits, or is it just open to higher income folks?
I think it's reapplying, isn't it, Gina?
Yeah, it's open to anyone. And I will tell you this, let's tread a little bit carefully there, because they did get more money. They are still taking appointments. And they wanted to change it to where, you know how you can only get LIHEAP once. They wanted to change it to where you could get it more than once. They're working on that. And so be careful how you present that. Just say, please call LIHEAP and see if you can get it again. And you can have them call Compassion Coalition if they can't, but they're working on changing these things right now. They are doing appointments by phone, and they should call LIHEAP if they need utility assistance. Just know that they're in the process of changing these things, so it may take a minute.
That's a really good warning, Gina, because as you're presenting these resources, remember they're getting inundated as well, and you can't promise. You don't know for sure if somebody's going to get TANF or LIHEAP or these other ones, so you can't. Again, when you do the referral, don't say, oh yeah, you can get that. Just say you may want to check. It might be worth your time to apply and see if you're eligible. because we don't know if they are or not. There could be other circumstances, and we don't want to get false hope up for money coming in and then they're not eligible, or with LIHEAP, they're not ready to take them or whatever. But at least you know that these are possibly out there for the people that you're serving. There's another new program through CAC, and this is again for families who have children who've lost employment. And it's possible assistance with rent up to $750. They're just starting this week. They're inundated. They were swamped yesterday, so they're going to have a hard time processing all these folks. They're not helping anyone in subsidized rent. So that means KCDC or somebody that has a Section 8 voucher, or they're living in a HUD subsidized place. So be aware that those families with children are not getting this help. So that's a good place for the church to step up with the subsidized people. We don't want them losing that. It's hard, so hard to get into a subsidized place. It takes months. So if the church can assist with, keeping that rent down or paying a little bit on it, I know they're not going to be evicted for 6 months, but at the end of that 6 months, we could have a big crisis if we don't help some now, I think, with the people that are calling us. So I think that's a good thing to help a little bit, on rent. And I think the landlords appreciate that too, and will be, because you think about the landlords not getting rent, for a long time. That's a problem. So they've got two of their neighborhood centers open. They've got the West Center open, which is at the LT Ross on Western Avenue, and that's covering the west end of town. And then the East Center is covering all the rest of the zip codes, east, south, and north zip codes. So that's where you would refer to someone to tell them to be real patient, in getting through. And probably, if they have their documentation together, that's going to be really good. All the ID for their families, Social Security, and letters from the employers showing that they've been laid off. They need to have all that together, because that's what they're going to ask them for anyway. And it'll help with that process. Just tell them to be really patient in doing that. So there's other partners in town that are looking at getting funding to try to help with needs and rent, and Salvation Army and Volunteer Ministry Center are taking a look at that, and you may hear more about that in the future if they have money for rent or other needs. On the website itself, on Salvation Army, it did say they were still helping with utilities. They're also giving out, food. Volunteer Ministry Center has been closed. They have a program called The Refuge, which helps financially with rent, utilities, or other needs. They've been closed during this past month. So we'll just have to.
Yeah, a few things that I'll say about the rent situation. So I have been meeting via Zoom with Salvation Army, Volunteer Ministry Center, and CAC about the rent situation. Salvation Army and VMC are going to help with rent, and they're going to use the same criteria that CAC is going to use. The problem is I don't know exactly how much they're going to do, although they did say that you were using the same criteria as CAC. I don't know if it was up to the 750. The reality is, what I want everybody to understand is that the money that CAC got could probably help maybe 150 families. That's a pretty small number when you look at our population. The money Salvation Army, Volunteer Ministry Center, and Compassion have can help some families too, but this is not going to help everyone. So I do think that churches are going to have to step in. And I would just, when you make referrals to CAC, I would be super honest with them that they've been inundated. Apparently it got around on Facebook yesterday that CAC got a grant, and they texted me in the middle of the day and said, we are inundated. And so they started filtering them over to Compassion Coalition. So the extra ones for us to assess. So just let them know that they're getting a lot of calls. They may have to leave a message, just to be patient with it. I think it's okay to go ahead and call Salvation Army. And Volunteer Ministry Center, it's not the refuge number, it's their main number that you should call. Carolyn, do you have that right in front of you, their main number?
I know the last part is 3926. I think the first part is 524-3926.
So it's the main number. That BMC is working really hard on the homeless population right now, opening the separate facility for anybody who is tested positive for COVID-19 or they're waiting on test results. And so you may have to leave a message, but they anyway. But we're all working on it, and we will keep you updated. If I get exact instructions from Salvation Army and BMC, I will send out an email to everybody that's on this call. But just be patient with them because I know that everybody's getting inundated right now.
Yeah, I was right. It's 524-3926. They haven't changed their number in 30 years, so I have it in my brain. So anyway, so yeah, that's just good. And yeah, there's potentially a lot more than 150 families, you know, that are going to need help. So there's going to be a place for the church to come into play. So you're going to have to weigh all these assistance programs, weigh your case, you know, and maybe need to help as well. The only thing I see clearly is that if they're getting unemployment, they don't need the churches. But I'm thinking, but if they haven't gotten it yet, they may need food, they may need some support, they may need someone to listen to them, because it's quite stressful waiting for your benefits when everything's behind and you don't have gas in your car to go to the store. That was one lady that you dealt with, Gina, wasn't it? She didn't have gas in her car to even get to the store. Tell them about that story.
Yeah, I had one that I gave a food gift card to. She came by the office. Her tire was almost flat. She was sobbing, saying, you know, I can't even take care of myself right now. And we had encouraged her, you know, some help is coming. Let's, you know, we're going to take it one day at a time, and kind of talked her down a little bit. And she called back and left a message that she had a ball at the store. And it just completely changed her whole outlook, just having a little bit of hope.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just really, really touched my heart. But so, you know, doing just a little thing can be helpful.
And we were able last month to do quite a number of gift cards because of assistance given by churches. So it's like what, 2,300 or more dollars in Food City cards and credit.
Yes, and the really neat thing is one of the roles Compassion Coalition is playing right now is being support for other organizations, and one of those is the Senior Citizens Senior Citizens
Home
Assistance Program. They are actually delivering food to seniors, and like if a senior can't get out or whatever, they're going to the store and buying the food. So we gave them gift cards, and a lot of these seniors have been like, I didn't know what I was going to do, and all of that. So we've been able to support some other organizations that are doing some really important work right now with seniors in our community. So that's been really good. We're coming up on about, you know, not too much longer, so we should probably kind of jump forward.
Okay, I'm jumping.
I have one statement. Jerry said to make sure to check on family members who might be ill and need to have gas to go to their treatments frequently. That happens quite often. So.
And sometimes that Food City card, because you can get gas at Food City, and they can use that for gas as well. And so that they need to do that.
So consider getting some cards and being able to, you know, run them to a person, you know, just kind of alleviate stress and let them know the church is there to support them. So when you're making a decision about whether to help financially, you're looking at, is this a crisis now? Are they going to have their KUB cut off or evicted? Well, they're not, but we've talked about, you know, how to support anyway because of the situation that we're in. Can the person help themselves? Will they qualify for COVID resources in time to meet needs? So if they need gas to get some, you know, there's some things that they're not going to have until these resources come in. Is there a government agency or ministry I can refer them to? So we're keeping you up to date on all of that. Look, you know, go ahead, and we always look at their family support system, and we look at whether they have a home church, because if they're calling your church, you want to see whether their own church is would be willing to partner or able to partner as well. Consider helping with gap needs that won't be covered by resources. So this is what we really want to focus at Church Benevolence Help on, is these gap needs and trying to discover this. and we'll just have to walk this through, case by case, and we're all learning together. And you're welcome to call us. Not that we have all the answers, but we're good at thinking through with you. And if you come up with something, let us know. And even if you're not helping financially, like the single man that I was telling you about, we're going to follow up in a week or so with volunteers, going to call him back and say, how are things going? Or did you get your stimulus? Do you feel like you're in a better shape now? And I always ask, do you have food in the house? Do you have food? That's just a really big question right now. So I just encourage you to do that. Okay.
Hey, Carolyn, can I mention one thing with the resources that we didn't mention?
Sure.
So at KLF, Compassion Coalition is part of Knoxville Leadership Foundation, and one of our staff, Alexa, are you on the call?
Oh, yes. Alexa was on.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so Alexa has been keeping a list of all employers who are currently hiring, and so we also can share that list with you. And so Alexa, you want to tell them about the list?
Sure. So we have been kind of doing a running list of employers who are hiring now. So there's lots of different levels. So it could be anywhere from entry level, there's some food service, there's manufacturing, there's even like engineering and tech positions and like manager levels. And they're people that we've called and talked to and verified that they're hiring now. So there's lots of jobs on Indeed and all these places, but they put holds on their positions. So they're basically taking applications but not hiring until July or August, which is not helpful. So we've got a running list. It's in an Excel sheet, and we'll shoot it out to you guys. We're updating it daily. So as positions get filled, then we're taking them off, and then adding new as they come up. So that's something that we can definitely share with everybody.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Alexa.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have anything they want to share that they've discovered during this last month? Resources? Okay. Well, let us know. And we're just ending with our 10 best practices that we always have in this training. Cover your work in prayer. Get your team together and pray over what your plan is going to be. It may look completely different than your church is used to doing. Guard your heart against a judgmental attitude. Listen to their story, as Gina said. Focus on the person and not just the need that they're talking about. People really need support right now. We all do on different levels. Verify circumstances, create policies. Right now, that's a little difficult. You're going to be designing them as you go with this. Never give cash directly to the person in need. Doing the Food City card or Pilot Gas card or something is going to be a better way to help. Explore opportunities for relationships. So how can you form a long-term relationship with the individuals? Of course, one way is calling back. They don't expect to get a call back when they call in somewhere for help. That sort of shocks them. So call them back. Know when to say no. I know I found myself in the last month, they call in and I'm like, oh my God, it's COVID. We got to go do whatever they ask. I'm like, wait a minute. Do they have resources? Are they operating in their normal sphere? We had a homeless gentleman living in the trash area at a Kroger's off Broadway or whatever. And we were thinking maybe we need to take him a card or something, but he had ways of eating and those weren't closed down like at Carm or different places. So we really didn't particularly need that. So just take a deep breath and analyze that a little bit. Partner with everyone in the city. Partner with other churches. It's even more important. It's always important for us to network with other churches and network with social services to bring the church and government and ministries together, because we can meet need on a deeper level if we do that. So
I wanted to let everyone know if they want to unmute themselves and ask a question, now's the time to do that. So
And Carolyn, can you unshare your screen so I can see everybody?
there's everybody. Now we can see everyone.
Let's see. Someone asked about Jamie asked about resources in Anderson County. And I told them to contact the United Way, and Alexa seconded me. Thanks, Alexa.
You can, also 211 does the other counties as well. And so calling 211 can help connect to resources in other counties.
I know of 4 aid to distressed families in Appalachian counties, Ethra, Anderson County, CAC, and Oak Ridge Torch. So that's from Jamie as well.
Awesome.
All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in, guys. You are awesome.
We really appreciate you. If you need anything at all, please call us. We're doing okay right now. Our volunteers have been absolutely incredible and are even kind of bored at home. So even on days they don't do calls, they're like, "Can I do calls today?" So we're staying pretty caught up right now. We're doing pretty good. So feel free to call us, and we will do everything we can to help in the situation. And any information that you get, make sure and let us know too, so we can add it to our list and just keep checking our website for those updates. And we're going to send an email to each of you that put information in the comments. And if you didn't, you can just email me. But we're going to send another email with our updated resources, the jobs list that Alexa talked about, the income guidelines that are the poverty guidelines, just so that you have those.
The COVID resource list is updating on Wednesdays on the website. So you can check back next Wednesday and there'll be more updates. So.
Well, it's 10 o'clock. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Let us know if you need anything.
Thank you all. That's great.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. It was very helpful.
Good.
Thank you, Jamie.
Be safe.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks. All right, I'm ending the meeting, y'all.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, Char.